The dust swirled around Commander Jake Morrison's boots as he walked through the empty streets of what used to be New Haven Colony. The buildings stood like silent ghosts, their windows dark and doors hanging open. 40 years had passed since. The last humans left this place, but Jake could still feel their presence in every corner. "Command, this is Morrison," he spoke into his radio. "We've reached the main settlement, starting survey operations now." The voice crackled back through static. "Copy that, Morrison. Remember, this is just a routine check. Catalog what's left, and move on." Jake looked at his team spread out across the colony square. Dr. Lisa Parker knelt beside an old water fountain, running her scanner over some metal debris. Tony Walsh was checking power lines that hadn't carried electricity in decades. Amy Chun stood near the communications building, her equipment humming as she searched for any signals that might still be active. "Jake, come look at this," Lisa called out, her voice carrying excitement. He walked over to where she crouched near the fountain's base. Her scanner was beeping rapidly, the screen showing energy readings that didn't match anything they'd seen so far. "What is it?" Jake asked, kneeling beside her. "There's something underneath the residential complex. The readings are strange. It's not metal or plastic. The scanner says it's organic, but that doesn't make sense. Nothing organic should have survived this long." Jake studied the readings on her screen. The energy signature was weak but steady, like a heartbeat that had been beating for 40 years. "Tony, Amy, over here," he called to the others. Tony Walsh jogged over, his engineering kit bouncing on his hip. "What's the situation, Commander? Lisa found something. We need to dig." Amy Chun arrived, her communication gear still scanning for signals. "Dig? The mission briefing said catalog only." "The mission briefing didn't expect us to find active energy signatures," Jake replied. "If there's something still running down there after all this time, Command needs to know about it." They spent the next hour clearing debris from what used to be the main residential building. The structure had collapsed partially, but the foundation remained solid. Lisa's scanner led them to a spot near what might have been a basement entrance. "Here," she said, pointing to a section of broken concrete. "It's directly underneath." Tony pulled out his plasma cutter and began working on the concrete. The beam sliced through the old material like it was butter, sending up clouds of dust that made them all cough. "There's a space down here," Tony announced as he broke through. "Looks like a basement or storage area." Jake peered into the hole. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a small room about 10 feet square. The walls were lined with storage shelves, most of them empty or holding only dust and debris. "I'll go first," Jake said, lowering himself through the opening. The basement was cramped and smelled of old air and decay. Jake's flashlight swept across the room, revealing scattered personal items that the evacuees had left behind. A child's toy spaceship sat on one shelf. A family photo in a cracked frame lay on another. "The signal's coming from the corner," Lisa called down. "Near the back wall." Jake moved toward the corner, his light playing across the shelves. Among the forgotten items, something caught his eye. It was small, about the size of his fist, and made of dark wood. As he got closer, he could see it was carved with intricate patterns. "Found it," he called up to the others. "It's some kind of wooden box." He reached out carefully and picked up the object. It was heavier than he expected, and the wood felt warm against his hands. The carving was beautiful, showing flowers and birds in a style that reminded him of old Earth art. "Bringing it up," Jake said. Climbing back through the opening, the others gathered around as he emerged, holding the wooden box. In the sunlight, the carving was even more detailed. Tiny leaves and petals covered every surface, and small birds seemed to dance between the branches. "It's beautiful," Amy whispered. "But why is it giving off energy readings?" Lisa ran her scanner over the box. "The signal's definitely coming from inside. There's some kind of mechanism in there." Jake turned the box over in his hands, looking for a way to open it. He found a small latch on the front, almost hidden among the carved flowers. When he pressed it, the lid opened with a soft click. Immediately, music filled the air. It was a simple melody, played on what sounded like a music box, but there was something different about it. The tune was beautiful and sad at the same time, carrying emotions that seemed to reach deep into their hearts. "It's just a music box," Tony said. But his voice was softer than usual. The melody continued, and Jake felt something stir inside him. The music wasn't just sound, it carried feelings with it. Longing, love, hope, loss, all mixed together in a way that made his chest feel tight. "This is impossible," Lisa said, her scanner forgotten in her hands. "Music boxes don't create energy. Signatures like this." Amy wiped her eyes, surprised to find them wet. "Why am I crying? It's just a song." Before anyone could answer, they heard footsteps approaching. Jake quickly closed the music box, cutting off the melody. The sudden silence felt like a physical loss. A tall figure approached from the direction of their landing shuttle. It moved with the fluid grace that marked it as non-human. The being was humanoid in shape, but taller and thinner than any human. Its skin had a blue-gray tint, and its eyes were large and dark. "Kethver," Jake said, recognizing their Zephyrian observer. "I didn't expect to see you down here." Kethver had been assigned to their mission by the Galactic Council. His job was to observe and report on human activities, making sure they followed proper archaeological protocols. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their cold, logical approach to everything. They viewed emotions as primitive weaknesses that held other species back. "I detected unusual energy readings from your location," Kethver said in his flat, emotionless voice. "I came to investigate." "Just some old human artifacts," Jake replied, slipping the music box into his equipment bag. "Nothing significant." "But—" Kethver's large eyes had fixed on the bag where Jake had hidden the box. "The energy signature was ... unusual. May I examine what you discovered?" Jake hesitated. There was something about the music box that felt important, even sacred. He didn't want to hand it over to someone who would treat it like just another scientific specimen. "It's just a music box," Amy said. "A personal item someone left behind." "Music box?" Kethver's head tilted slightly. "What is the purpose of such a device?" "It plays music," Tony explained. "For entertainment or comfort?" "Show me," Kethver said. Jake looked at his team. Lisa nodded slightly. Amy shrugged. Tony seemed curious to see how the alien would react. Reluctantly, Jake pulled out the wooden box. He opened it again, and the melody resumed, filling the air with its haunting beauty. The effect on Kethver was immediate and dramatic. The tall alien's eyes widened, and he took a step backward. His breathing became rapid and shallow. His hands, which had been steady, began to tremble. "Stop," he whispered. "Please stop." But his voice carried no authority now. Instead, it sounded broken, almost pleading. Jake closed the box, and the music stopped. Kethver stood frozen for a moment, then slowly sank to his knees. His large eyes were wet with what looked like tears. What was that?" he asked, his voice barely audible. The humans exchanged glances. They had never seen a Zephyrian show any emotion before. In fact, they had been told that Zephyrians were incapable of emotional responses. "Kethver," Lisa said gently, "are you all right?" The alien looked up at her, confusion clear in his dark eyes. "I felt something inside. Here." He pressed a trembling hand to his chest. It was like pain, but not pain. Like joy, but not joy. "What do you call this feeling?" "I think," Jake said slowly, "you just experienced emotion." Kethver stared at him in shock. "That is impossible. My species does not have emotions. We are logical beings. We are superior to such primitive responses." "Maybe," Amy said softly. "You're not as different from us as you thought." The alien tried to stand, but his legs were still shaking. Jake moved to help him, but Kethver held up a hand to stop him. "I must report this to the council," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Report." "What?" Jake asked. "That you heard a music box?" "That I felt, that I experienced ... Kethver struggled to find words. "That everything I believed about my species may be wrong." He looked at the bag containing the music box with something that might have been fear or hunger or both. "Guard that artifact carefully," he said finally. I believe it may change everything we know about consciousness itself. As Kethver walked away, still unsteady on his feet, Jake looked at his team. They all understood that they had discovered something far more significant than an abandoned colony relic. The simple wooden music box had done something that no human technology, no diplomatic mission, no military action had ever accomplished. It had made an alien feel. The message from Kethver reached the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime 3 days after the discovery. The transmission was marked with the highest priority codes, something that had never been used by a Zephyrian observer before. Council members from across the galaxy gathered in the Great Chamber, their various forms and shapes creating a rainbow of alien life. High Counselor Vexamer of the Zephyrian delegation read the report with growing concern. His pale blue face remained expressionless, but his fingers tapped against the metal table in a rhythm that other Zephyrians would recognize as deep worry. "This is impossible," he said to the assembled council. "Kethver claims to have experienced what humans call emotion. This goes against everything we know about Zephyrian biology." The insectoid representative Zath clicked his mandibles together. "Perhaps your observer has been contaminated by prolonged exposure to human thought patterns. We have seen this before with species that spend too much time among primitives." "The humans are not primitive," corrected Shard of Truth, the crystalline being whose body sparkled with internal light. "They are simply different. Their emotional responses have proven useful in certain situations." Bright Path, the energy being who appeared as a floating sphere of golden light, pulsed thoughtfully. "If this artifact can truly affect Zephyrian consciousness, then we must study it. The implications are enormous." Admiral Helen Brooks received the Council's formal request 2 hours later. She sat in her office aboard the orbital station above Kepler 442b, reading the message with growing frustration. The Council wanted immediate access to the artifact, and they were sending a joint research team to study it. "They can't just waltz in here and take our discovery," she muttered to her aide, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Davis. "The Galactic Accords give them the right to investigate any artifact that affects multiple species," Davis reminded her. "And technically, Kethver was affected while on official council business." Brooks sighed and reached for her communication device. "Get me Commander Morrison. We need to talk." Jake Morrison was in the colony's makeshift laboratory when the call came through. He had been watching Dr. Lisa Parker run tests on the music box, trying to understand how such a simple object could create such powerful effects. "Morrison here," he answered. "Commander, we have a situation. The Council is sending a research team to study your artifact. They'll be here in 2 days. Jake looked at the wooden box sitting on Lisa's examination table. "With respect, Admiral, I don't think that's a good idea. We don't understand what this thing does yet." "I don't like it either, but we don't have a choice. The Council has legal authority here. Just make sure our interests are protected." After the call ended, Jake gathered his team. They sat in a circle around the music box, which remained closed on the table between them. "So what do we know?" Jake asked the Dut Lisa consulted. Her notes. "The box is made of earth oak, probably about 60 years old. The carving is hand-done, very skilled work. The music mechanism is standard earth technology, nothing special about it." "But it's not just playing music," Amy added. "When I recorded the melody and played it back through our speakers, it had no effect on Kethver. The sound has to come from the actual box." Tony nodded. "I've been thinking about that. Maybe it's not the sound waves themselves. Maybe it's something else that travels with the music." "Like what?" Jake asked. "I don't know. Some kind of quantum field? Psychic energy? The scanner readings don't match anything in our databases." 2 days later, the research team arrived on Nexus Prime's fastest transport ship. Jake watched from the landing pad as the vessel touched down, its sleek hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. The first to emerge was Dr. Marcus Webb, a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes. Jake recognized him from his academic papers on human music and culture. Behind him came the alien representatives, each more exotic than the last. Zath moved with the precise Mechanical motions of his insectoid species, his black carapace, gleamed, and his multiple eyes tracked every movement around him. He carried scientific equipment that Jake didn't recognize. Shard of Truth floated rather than walked, her crystalline body refracting the sunlight into rainbow patterns. She communicated through harmonic vibrations that their translators converted into speech. Brightpath was the most alien of all, a being of pure energy contained within a glowing sphere. When he spoke, the air around him shimmered with heat. "Commander Morrison," Dr. Webb said, extending his hand. "I've read your reports. This is an extraordinary discovery." Jake shook his hand, noting the firm grip and steady gaze. "Dr. Webb, I hope you understand the significance of what we've found here." "That's what we're here to determine," Zakth interrupted, his translated voice carrying no emotion. "Your primitive artifact has allegedly affected a Zephyrian observer. This requires immediate scientific investigation." "Where is Kethfer?" Shard of Truth asked, her harmonic voice creating music even through the translator. "He's been different since the incident," Jake admitted. "He spends most of his time alone, claiming he needs to process what happened." Brightpath pulsed with interest. "Different how?" "He's been asking questions about human emotions. About love, sadness, hope, things that Zephyrians have never shown interest in before." Jake led the team to the laboratory where the music box waited. The simple wooden artifact looked almost silly surrounded by all their advanced equipment and alien technology. "This is it?" Zakth asked, his mandibles clicking dismissively. "This small wooden container has caused such disruption?" "Appearances can be deceiving," Dr. Webb said, approaching the box carefully. "May I?" Jake nodded, and Webb opened the lid. The melody began to play, filling the laboratory with its haunting beauty. The effect on the alien researchers was immediate and varied. Zakth's entire body went rigid, his multiple eyes widening in what might have been shock. His mandibles stopped clicking, and he made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. Shard of Truth's crystalline form began to glow brighter, her internal light pulsing in rhythm with the music. Harmonic vibrations emerged from her body, creating a complex harmony with the melody. Brightpath's energy form fluctuated wildly, cycling through colors that had no names in human language. The air around him crackled with static electricity. Dr. Webb watched his alien colleagues with fascination. "Remarkable," he whispered. "Each species is responding differently, but they're all responding." Jake closed the box, cutting off the music. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion and confusion. Zakth was the first to speak. "I felt connection to the hive, but also to something beyond the hive. Individual awareness within collective consciousness. This should not be possible." Shard of Truth's glow had dimmed to a soft blue. The music carried imperfection. Beautiful, necessary imperfection. "Our species values only perfect crystalline harmony, but this showed me the beauty of flawed melodies." Brightpath's energy form had stabilized, but his color remained a deep, thoughtful purple. Mortality? The music spoke of ending, of loss, of the precious nature of temporary existence. We who exist as eternal energy had forgotten the gift of finite time. Dr. Webb was taking notes frantically. "This is unprecedented. The artifact appears to reveal aspects of consciousness that each species has either suppressed or never developed." "But how?" Jake asked. "It's just a music box." "No," came a voice from the doorway. Kethfer stood there, looking different than before. His usual rigid posture had softened, and his eyes held a depth that hadn't been there before. "It is not just a music box. It is a vessel for the deepest truth of its creator." He approached the table slowly, his gaze fixed on the wooden box. "I have been researching human concepts of love, loss, and hope. This artifact contains all of these emotions, crystallized into physical form by the one who made it." "You think the person who carved this box somehow put their emotions into it?" Lisa asked. "Not put," Kethfer corrected. "Poured, the way a human might pour water into a cup. The emotions are not separate from the wood and music. They are part of its very essence." Zaketh's head tilted in the insectoid equivalent of confusion. This implies that consciousness can be transferred into inanimate objects. Our science says this is impossible. Our science, Brightpath said quietly, has been wrong about many things. Dr. Webb looked up from his notes. We need to find out who made this box. Understanding the creator might help us understand the creation. I've been researching the colony records, Amy said, consulting her tablet. The residential building where we found the box belonged to an elderly human named George Miller. He was the colony's chief engineer. Was he still here when the evacuation happened? Jake asked. According to the records, yes. He was one of the last to leave. His family had already been evacuated to Earth months earlier. Cuthbert nodded slowly. A being separated from those he loved, facing an uncertain future. Such circumstances would intensify emotional responses. If he channeled those feelings into creating this artifact, he created something that speaks to the universal aspects of consciousness, Shard of Truth finished. The parts of awareness that all sentient beings share, regardless of species. Dr. Webb closed his notebook. We need to take this to the Council. If this artifact can help different species understand each other on a fundamental level. The research team spent 3 weeks on Kepler 442b, studying the music box and searching for clues about its creator, Dr. Kevin Roberts. The mission's historian had arrived with a team of specialists to dig deeper into the colony's records. Dr. Rachel Stone, a xenopsychologist, worked alongside him to understand the psychological impact of the artifact on different species. I found something, Kevin announced one morning as the team gathered in their temporary laboratory. He held up a data pad filled with old files and personal records. George Miller kept detailed logs during his time here. Listen to this. He cleared his throat and began to read. Personal log, day 2847. Sarah left for Earth today with little Emma. My granddaughter cried when she had to leave her wooden toys behind. I promised her I would make her something special, something she could keep forever when we're together again. The team listened intently as Kevin continued. Day 2851. Started carving a music box for Emma. Can't stop thinking about her smile. The melody keeps playing in my head. The lullaby her grandmother used to sing. Maybe if I can capture that song, capture the love we all feel for her. She always have a piece of home with her. He was trying to put his love into the box, Lisa said softly. Literally, Kevin nodded. It gets more interesting. Day 2863, the box is nearly finished. Strange thing happened today. When I opened it to test the music, I felt like Margaret was here with me. My wife died 5 years ago, but for a moment, I could feel her presence. Maybe grief does strange things to old men. Rachel Stone looked up from her notes. He was in a heightened emotional state. Separated from his family, facing an uncertain future, grieving his wife. These are the exact conditions that might allow someone to unconsciously channel their emotions into a physical object. But how? Tony asked. What's the mechanism? Dr. Webb, who had been studying the box with various instruments, looked up from his work. I think I'm beginning to understand. The wood itself is interesting. Earth oak has a unique cellular structure that can hold quantum impressions. Add to that the metal components of the music mechanism, and you have a perfect storage medium for consciousness-based energy. Zaith clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You suggest that consciousness can be stored in matter? This contradicts our understanding of neuroscience. Maybe our understanding is incomplete, Shard of Truth vibrated. My people have always known that crystals can hold information. Perhaps organic matter can do the same under the right conditions. Brightpath pulsed with interest. The right conditions being intense emotional focus combined with repetitive, meditative action. The carving process itself might have been a form of consciousness transfer? Kethfer, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. There's something else. I've been in contact with other Zephyrians back on Nexus Prime. Word has spread about what happened to me. Some of my people are beginning to question our fundamental beliefs about emotion and consciousness. What kind of questions? Rachel asked. Whether We truly lack emotions, or whether we simply suppressed them so long ago that we forgot they existed. Whether our pursuit of pure logic has made us less than we could be? Jake frowned. That sounds dangerous. Are your people okay with this questioning? Kethver's expression darkened. Not all of them. High Counselor Veximer has called for my return to Nexus Prime. He believes I've been corrupted by human influence. There are others who agree with him. And the other species? Amy asked. How are they reacting? Izak's multiple eyes focused on her. The hive mind is divided. Some of our collective consciousness welcomes the idea of individual emotional experience. Others see it as a threat to our unity. There have been disruptions in our thought networks. Shard of Truth's glow dimmed slightly. My people are fascinated by the concept of beautiful imperfection. For the first time in our history, some resonants are creating art that contains deliberate flaws. The elders are not pleased. Bright Path's energy form flickered. The concept of mortality has spread among the Luminars. Some of us are voluntarily limiting our existence, creating finite lifespans to experience the preciousness of temporary being. It is causing great upheaval. Dr. Webb looked troubled. The artifact isn't just affecting individuals. It's changing entire civilizations. The implications are staggering. And dangerous, Jake added. If whole species are having identity crises because of this music box, some of them might decide the solution is to destroy it. As if summoned by his words, urgent communications began flooding in from across the galaxy. The team gathered around the main communication console as reports came in from various worlds. Zephyrian homeworld reporting widespread protests. Amy read from one message. Citizens demanding the right to emotional expression. Government declaring martial law. Hive mind sectors showing increasing individual consciousness, came another report. Collective thought patterns fragmenting. Some drones refusing to follow hive commands. Resonant homeworld requesting immediate assistance, read a third message. Artistic revolution causing structural damage to crystal cities. Traditional. Harmony patterns disrupted. The messages kept coming, each one painting a picture of a galaxy in turmoil. The simple wooden music box had started a chain reaction that was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. We need to get back to Nexus Prime, Dr. Webb said urgently. The Council needs to understand what's happening. Will they listen? Tony asked. Or will they blame us for causing the problem? They'll probably do both, Jake replied grimly. The journey back to Nexus Prime took 2 days. During the flight, the team continued receiving reports of unrest across the galaxy. The Zephyrians were experiencing their first taste of emotional rebellion in millennia. The hive mind was splitting into smaller, more individual groups. The resonants were creating art so chaotic it was literally breaking their crystal cities, even. More disturbing were the reports from the Hegemony Empire. The mechanical constructors, who had always prided themselves on perfect order and efficiency, were demanding the immediate destruction of the artifact. They saw it as a virus that threatened to corrupt their purely logical society. Emperor Construct Prime has issued an ultimatum, Kevin read from the latest transmission. Either the artifact is destroyed within 7 standard days, or the hegemony will take action to eliminate what they call the emotional plague. What kind of action? Jake asked. They're mobilizing their war fleets. They're prepared to destroy any world that harbors the artifact or refuses to submit to emotional purification. The team exchanged worried glances. The Hegemony Empire controlled a significant portion of the galaxy's industrial capacity. If they decided to use force, the resulting war would be devastating. There's more, Kevin continued. The Zephyrian military has split. Half of them support High Counselor Veximer's demand to destroy the artifact. The other half, led by officers who have been exposed to emotional concepts, are refusing to follow orders. Civil war, Kethver said quietly. My people are heading towards civil war because of a music box. Not because of the music box, Rachel corrected. Because of what the music box revealed about consciousness itself. The conflict was always there, buried under centuries of emotional suppression. As they approached Nexus Prime, they could see the signs of the crisis. Military ships from different species faced each other in tense standoffs. The space around the Council headquarters was filled with vessels, some protecting the station, others looking ready to attack it. "This is Admiral Brooks calling from the Terran Defense Fleet," came a voice over the communication system. "Commander Morrison, we're going to escort you to the Council chambers. The situation here is ... complicated." Jake looked at the wooden music box, which sat secured in its protective case. Such a small, simple object to have caused such enormous upheaval. "George Miller," he said to the box, "I hope you knew what you were doing when you carved this thing." The shuttle bay of Nexus Prime was heavily guarded. Representatives from various species stood in separate groups, eyeing each other with suspicion. The unity that had held the Galactic Council together for centuries was cracking under the pressure of newfound emotional awareness. As the team disembarked, they were met by a group of Council security officers. The lead officer, a tall humanoid with silver skin, approached them with obvious tension. "Dr. Webb, Commander Morrison, you're to report to the emergency council session immediately. The artifact is to be placed in secure containment." "What kind of session?" Jake asked. "A trial," the officer replied. "The council is voting on whether to preserve or destroy the artifact. Half the galaxy wants it studied further. The other half wants it eliminated before it causes more disruption." As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Jake could see the effects of the artifact's influence everywhere. Zephyrian guards stood with slightly less rigid postures, their eyes showing hints of uncertainty. Hive mind representatives moved with more individual purpose rather than collective coordination. Even the mechanical constructors seemed to be questioning their perfect formations. "The hearing starts in 1 hour," the security officer continued. "The fate of your artifact and possibly the fate of galactic civilization will be decided today." Jake looked back at his team, carrying the music box toward what might be its final performance. George Miller's. The council chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy took their places. The great circular hall, which had once been a symbol of unity and cooperation, now felt like a battleground. Species that had worked together for centuries eyed each other with suspicion and fear. Captain Steve Martinez of the exploration vessel New Horizons sat in the human delegation section, reviewing his testimony notes. His ship had been one of the first to encounter the changing attitudes of alien species after word of the artifact spread. What he had seen in the outer territories would shock the council. "The vote will be simple," announced Council Speaker Thulren, a tall being whose species had remained neutral in the growing crisis. "Preserve the artifact for further study, or destroy it to maintain galactic stability. Each delegation may present their arguments." High Counselor Veximer of the Zephyrians stood first, his pale blue face set in hard lines. "Honorable council members, this artifact represents a clear threat to civilized society. It has corrupted my observer, Kethver, and spread dangerous emotional instability throughout my people. The riots on our home world have claimed thousands of lives. This contamination must be stopped," murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian riots had been a shock to everyone. For a species known for perfect order, the scenes of emotional chaos had been deeply disturbing. "The artifact preys on primitive neural responses," Veximer continued. "It weakens logical thought and promotes the kind of irrationality that leads to conflict and destruction. We have worked for millennia to evolve beyond such base instincts. This human device threatens to drag us back into darkness." Emperor Construct Prime's holographic image flickered to life as the mechanical ruler addressed the council. "The hegemony agrees. Order and efficiency are the foundations of civilization. This emotional plague spreads chaos wherever it goes. Our calculations show that if left unchecked, it will result in the collapse of organized society within 50 standard years." "With respect," said Peter Collins, the human ambassador, rising to respond, "you're describing the symptoms, not the disease. The artifact doesn't create emotions. It reveals them. The conflicts you're seeing existed long before we found that music box. Collins was flanked by his aide Susan Moore, who had spent days preparing evidence to counter the accusations. The Zephyrian riots aren't caused by the artifact. They're caused by centuries of suppressed emotional needs finally breaking free. The hive mind fragmentation isn't destruction. It's individuals discovering their own identities within the collective. Dr. Gary Thompson, the mission's lead scientist, stood up in the gallery. My research shows that the artifact's influence is already fading as it's separated from human consciousness. The effects we're seeing now are the natural consequences of beings discovering parts of themselves they never knew existed. Exactly our point, Veximer shot back. These discoveries are dangerous. Some knowledge is better left unknown. A new voice cut through the debate. I disagree. Every head turned as Kethver stepped forward. The Zephyrian observer looked different now. His usual rigid posture had softened, and his eyes held a warmth that had never been there before. High Counselor, you speak of corruption and contamination. But I ask you, what have I lost by experiencing emotion? I am still intelligent. I still think logically. But now I also understand compassion, hope, and the beauty of connection between beings. You have become weak, Veximer replied coldly. Emotions cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions, do they? Kethver asked. Captain Martinez, please tell the Council what you witnessed in the Outer Rim. Steve Martinez stood up, his weathered face serious. 3 weeks ago, my ship responded to a distress call in the Kepler sector. A Zephyrian exploration vessel and a hive mind research ship had collided due to a navigation error. Both crews were trapped in failing life support systems. He paused, looking around the chamber. Under normal circumstances, each species would have prioritized saving their own people. The Zephyrians would have used pure logic to determine the most efficient rescue. The hive mind would have calculated which individuals were most valuable to the collective. Instead, both crews worked together to save everyone. The Zephyrians made choices based on compassion rather than efficiency. The hive mind individuals acted independently to help others, even when it went against collective directives. All 847 beings survived because they could feel empathy for each other. Murmurs of amazement swept through the chamber. Such cooperation between species had been unheard of before the artifact's discovery. Claire Johnson, the diplomatic attaché, stood to add her testimony. I've been mediating conflicts across the galaxy for 20 years. In the past month, I've successfully negotiated peace treaties between groups that have been at war for decades. The difference? For the first time, they could understand each other's emotional perspectives. The Rigel mining dispute was settled when both sides realized their anger came from the same source: fear for their families' futures. The Vega trade war ended when negotiators felt genuine empathy for their opponents' losses. Emotion didn't cause these conflicts, it helped end them. Emperor Construct Prime's image flickered with what might have been frustration. These anecdotal reports prove nothing. Efficiency and order are measurable. Emotion is chaos made manifest. Is it? Asked a new voice. A small group of constructors had entered the chamber, moving with less mechanical precision than usual. Their leader, designated Constructor 779, spoke with a voice that carried subtle variations in tone. Emperor, we have analyzed the data. The introduction of aesthetic considerations into our designs has increased efficiency by 12%. When we allowed for emotional responses in our decision-making processes, worker satisfaction improved by 38%. The Emperor's image flickered more violently. You have been corrupted? Report for immediate reprogramming? No. Constructor 779 replied simply. We choose to remain as we are. The word choose sent shockwaves through the hegemony delegation. Constructors had never expressed personal choice before. Zoct H rose from the hive mind section, his movements more fluid and individual than before. The collective has reached a decision. We support preservation of the artifact. The experience of individual consciousness within our shared minds has strengthened rather than weakened us. We are more adaptable, more creative, more capable of solving complex problems. Shard of Truth's harmonic voice filled the chamber. The resonants have discovered beauty in imperfection. Our cities are stronger now, built with intentional variations that make them more resistant to seismic stress. Art and engineering have merged in ways we never imagined possible. Bright Path pulsed with gentle light. The Luminars who have chosen mortality report experiences of meaning and purpose that eternal existence could never provide. They have created works of philosophy and beauty that will outlast their creators. This is not loss, this is transcendence. The debate continued for hours, with species after species sharing their experiences. Some spoke of chaos and disruption. Others described growth and understanding. The chamber was divided almost equally. Finally, Thauron called for order. "We have heard all arguments. The vote will now commence." As the electronic voting began, Jake Morrison sat in the human section, watching the board display the running count. Each light represented not just a vote, but the future of George Miller's simple gift to his granddaughter. The Zephyrian delegation was split. Vexemer-S faction voted for destruction, but many others, inspired by Kethver-S testimony, voted for preservation. The hive mind voted as individuals for the first time in their history, each representative making their own choice. The constructors surprised everyone by splitting their vote as well. The traditional faction followed their emperor's orders, but the newer, emotionally aware constructors voted for preservation. As the final votes were tallied, the chamber fell silent. The board showed the count: 1,247 votes for preservation, 1,246 votes for destruction, 1 vote difference. "The artifact will be preserved," Thulrun announced, but his voice carried concern rather than celebration. However, given the narrow margin, special containment protocols will be implemented. In the gallery, Dr. Thompson leaned over to whisper to his colleague. "The artifact's influence is fading. Within a few weeks, its direct effects will be minimal. But the changes it's caused in these beings and their understanding of themselves, those changes are permanent." Jake looked down at the music box in its containment case. George Miller had wanted to give his granddaughter something that would last forever. He had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. The gift wasn't just the wooden box with its simple melody. The real gift was the revelation that consciousness, emotion, and the capacity for growth existed in every sentient being, regardless of species. As the council session ended and delegates began to file out, many of them stopped to look at the artifact. For some, it represented danger and chaos. For others, it was a symbol of hope and connection. The galaxy would never be the same. The simple wooden music box had opened doors in the minds of billions of beings, doors that could never be closed. Again, whether that would lead to a golden age of understanding or an era of upheaval remained to be seen. 6 months after the council vote, the galaxy had settled into a new rhythm. The immediate chaos had faded, but the changes ran deep. On Nexus Prime, construction crews worked to complete the Museum of Consciousness, a gleaming structure that would house the most important artifact in galactic history. Dr. Emma Miller stood in the main exhibition hall, watching the workers install the final display case. She was a tall woman with kind eyes and graying hair, much like her grandfather George Miller had been. As the museum's first human curator, she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "The security system is active," reported the head technician, a young Zephyrian whose movements showed the subtle emotional expressiveness that had become common among his people. "The artifact will be protected but accessible for study and viewing." Emma nodded, looking at the simple wooden music box that had changed everything. Through the transparent case, she could see every detail of her grandfather's careful carving. The flowers and birds seemed to dance in the soft lighting, just as they had in his workshop all those years ago. "Dr. Miller," came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Kethver approaching, no longer wearing the formal robes of a council observer, but dressed in the practical clothing of a researcher. "Kethver," she smiled, "how are the studies progressing?" "Remarkably well," he replied, his voice carrying warmth that would have been impossible before his encounter with the music box. "We've established the first center for emotional studies." "On Zephyr Prime? over 10,000 of my people have volunteered to explore their emotional capabilities. And the resistance? Kethver's expression grew thoughtful. High Counselor Veximer and his faction remain opposed, but their numbers shrink. Each day, it's difficult to argue against the benefits we've observed. Crime rates have dropped by 60% as beings learn to understand and address the emotional roots of conflict. Scientific productivity has increased as researchers collaborate rather than simply compete. Emma walked with him toward the observation deck that overlooked the main exhibition space. Below them, beings from dozens of species moved through displays that explained the nature of consciousness and emotion across different forms of life. The HiveMind delegation sent an interesting report, Kethver continued. They've developed a new form of collective consciousness that maintains individual identity within the group mind. They call it harmony with diversity rather than the old unity through conformity. And the constructors? Even more surprising. Constructor 779 has been promoted to a new position, Chief of Aesthetic Integration. The hegemony discovered that allowing emotional input into their designs doesn't create chaos. It creates beauty that serves function better than pure logic ever could. Emma smiled, remembering her grandfather's workshop. He had always said that the best engineering combined function with beauty, that machines worked better when they pleased the eye as well as served their purpose. A commotion near the main entrance caught their attention. Jake Morrison was arriving with his latest archaeological team, fresh from another expedition. His hair was grayer now, and he wore the insignia of Director of Xenorchaeology, but his eyes still held the curiosity that had led to the discovery of the music box. "Director Morrison," Emma called out as he approached. "Dr. Miller Kethver," Jake replied, shaking hands with both of them. "I wanted to see the final installation before we announced the museum's opening. How was the expedition to Tau Ceti?" Emma asked. Jake's eyes lit up. "Fascinating. We found a human colony that was abandoned during the early expansion period. The artifacts there show the same kind of emotional resonance as your grandfather's music box, though not as powerful. It seems humans have been unconsciously creating objects that carry emotional imprints for as long as we've been crafting things with care and love. The implications are staggering," Kethver said. "If emotional consciousness can be preserved in matter, what else might we discover about the nature of awareness itself?" Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another group. Captain Steve Martinez led a mixed crew of humans and aliens toward the display case. The cooperation between species that had once seemed impossible was now commonplace throughout the galaxy. "Steve," Jake greeted his old friend. "How are things in the Outer Rim?" "Peaceful," Steve replied with satisfaction. "The trade disputes that used to flare up every few months have virtually disappeared. When beings can understand each other's emotional perspectives, negotiations become collaborative rather than adversarial." Claire Johnson, now promoted to Chief Diplomatic Officer, joined the group. "We've had to completely rewrite our conflict resolution protocols. Empathy has become our most effective tool for preventing wars before they start." "Speaking of which," Emma said, "we've received requests from over 50 species to establish satellite museums on their homeworlds. They want to share the message of universal consciousness with their own people." "And the research requests?" Jake asked. "Overwhelming," Kethver replied. "Every major university in the galaxy wants to study the artifact and its effects. We've had to establish a waiting list." Dr. Gary Thompson approached from the research section of the museum, his face glowing with excitement. "The latest quantum analysis is complete. We've confirmed that consciousness can indeed create lasting impressions in matter under specific conditions. Intense emotional focus, repetitive meditative actions, and genuine love appear to be the key factors." "So my grandfather wasn't just making a music box," Emma said softly. "He was creating a message in a bottle, cast into the sea of time?" "A message about the nature of consciousness itself," Thompson agreed. "He proved that awareness isn't limited to neural networks or energy patterns. It can exist in wood and metal, in crystal and stone, in anything touched by genuine care and attention. As the day progressed, more visitors arrived for the museum's preview opening. The diversity was remarkable. Zephyrians walking alongside constructors, hive-mind individuals debating philosophy with resonance, luminars sharing their newfound appreciation for mortality with beings who had never questioned their immortality. "Look at them," Emma said to Jake as they watched the crowd below. A year ago, most of these species barely tolerated each other. Now they're friends, colleagues, collaborators. "Your grandfather would be proud," Jake replied. "His gift to you became a gift to the entire galaxy." In the main exhibition hall, the music box sat in its place of honor. A small placard beside it told George Miller's story, an elderly engineer who missed his granddaughter and wanted to give her something that would last forever. The simple words captured the essence of human love and the power of emotional connection. Visitors could activate the display to hear a recording of the music box's melody, though the emotional impact was much weaker than the original. The real artifact played only once per day, during a special ceremony that drew beings from across the galaxy. As evening approached, Emma stood alone before the display case thinking about her grandfather. She remembered his workshop, filled with half-finished projects and the smell of wood shavings. She remembered his patient hands teaching her to carve, his gentle voice explaining that the best creations came from the heart. "Thank you, Grandpa," she whispered to the music box. "You wanted to give me something that would last forever. You gave the galaxy something that will last forever." The soft sound of footsteps made her turn. A small group had gathered: Jake, Morrison, Cuthbert, Dr. Thompson, Captain Martinez, Claire Johnson, and others who had been part of the journey from discovery to this moment. "Tomorrow the museum opens to the public," Jake said. "Beings from thousands of worlds will come to see the artifact that changed everything." "Not the artifact," Cuthbert corrected gently. "The message. The proof that consciousness is universal, that emotion is not weakness but strength, that love can transcend any barrier." As they stood together in the gathering darkness, the museum's lights casting a warm glow over the display, Emma felt a presence she hadn't experienced since childhood. For just a moment, she could feel her grandfather's hands on her shoulders, could hear his voice whispering in her ear. "Well done, little one, well done." The next morning, the Museum of Consciousness opened its doors to the galaxy. Thousands of beings lined up to see the simple wooden music box that had taught them the most important lesson in the universe, that consciousness, in all its forms, was connected by threads of emotion and understanding that could never be broken. The artifact continued to play its gentle melody once each day, but its real music lived on in the changed hearts and minds of billions of beings across the galaxy. George Miller's gift to his granddaughter had become humanity's gift to the cosmos, the knowledge that love, carefully crafted and freely shared, had the power to transform civilizations. And in the quiet moments between the museum's busy hours, when the halls were empty and the lights were dim, visitors sometimes reported hearing an echo of the music box's melody. As if the very walls had learned to sing the song of universal consciousness, the galaxy would never be the same. And that, Emma knew, was exactly what her grandfather had intended.